Have you ever woken up from a dream so vivid, so bizarre, that it followed you through your morning coffee and ruined your entire day? You remember the crumbling teeth, the endless hallways, or perhaps a faceless stranger chasing you through a familiar street. You try to look it up on one of those generic dream dictionary websites. It tells you that dreaming of water means anxiety, and dreaming of flying means ambition. But as you read the definition, it feels flat. It does not fit. It misses the specific weight of what you actually felt in that dark room, in that strange world. Here is the truth. A dream is not a coded message meant to be translated by a universal key. A dream is a letter written by your own mind to your own mind in a language that only you speak. Carl Jung understood this better than almost anyone in history. He did not view dreams as random neural static or cheap parlor tricks from the subconscious. He saw them as self-portraits. He saw them as the psyche trying to balance itself out, whispering secrets that your waking, rational ego is simply too proud or too busy to hear. Today, we are going to look past the pop psychology and the medieval dream books. We are going to walk through a 3-step method to actually decode your dreams the way Jung intended. Not by guessing what the symbols mean in general, but by discovering what they mean to you specifically. Let us start with the first trap that almost everyone falls into when they try to remember a dream. You wake up. The memory is there, shimmering like morning mist on a lake. You reach for your phone, or you turn over to check the news, and within 30 seconds, 90% of it is gone. Why does this happen? Because your waking ego is a bouncer. It stands at the door of consciousness, letting in only what makes sense, what is useful, and what is socially acceptable. Dreams do not care about social acceptability. They do not care about your to-do list. They speak in the oldest language known to humanity, the language of images, paradoxes, and raw emotion. When you ignore your dreams, you are essentially hanging up the phone on the most honest part of yourself. Think about the last time you felt completely overwhelmed at work or in a relationship. You probably tried to logic your way out of it. You made pros and cons lists. You talked to friends who just told you what you wanted to hear. But deep down, the tension remained. Then you went to sleep. And that night, you had a dream where you were trapped in a cage made of glass, watching everyone walk past you without hearing your screams. Your rational mind says that makes no sense. You are a successful adult with a good job and a nice apartment. Why are you in a glass cage? This is where the Jungian method begins. Step 1 is what we call the translation of sensory details. Moving away from the plot and into the atmosphere, most people make the mistake of focusing entirely on the narrative of the dream. They treat it like a movie plot with a beginning, a middle, and an end. But Jung taught us that the narrative is often just a smokescreen. The real meaning lives in the texture of the experience. When you wake up, before you even open your eyes, you need to capture the emotional climate. Ask yourself this: how did the air feel in that dream? Was it hot and suffocating or cold and sterile? What was the color palette? Was everything washed out in shades of gray, or was there one glaring, unnatural patch of neon red? These details matter infinitely more than what actually happened. If you dreamed that you missed a train, the plot is about missing a train. But the real dream is about the sickening drop in your stomach, the frantic ticking of the clock, and the absolute helplessness of standing on the platform as the red lights fade into the tunnel. That feeling is the exact emotion your psyche is trying to drag out into the light because you are ignoring it in your waking life. You see, your conscious mind is great at adaptation. It helps you get through the workday, pay your taxes, and smile at people you secretly despise. But that adaptation comes at a cost. You push away your fears, your creative impulses, and your legitimate anger. You shove them down into the dark basement of the psyche. Jung called this neglected, rejected territory the shadow. And the shadow loves the night. When you go to sleep, the bouncer falls asleep too, and the shadow starts knocking on the door. The glass cage dream is not about glass or cages. It is about the suffocating feeling of being invisible in your own life, trapped by the expectations you agreed to carry. Now, once you have captured the emotional climate and moved past the basic plot, you are ready for step 2. This is where most people get tripped up because it requires abandoning every instinct you have been taught about symbolism. Step 2 is stripping the dream symbols of their cultural cliches and returning them to their personal roots. Let us take a classic example. Snakes. If you tell someone you dreamed of a snake, they will immediately quote a dream dictionary or offer some spiritual warning about betrayal. But Jung did not care what a snake meant in a book written 500 years ago. He cared what a snake meant to you. To a person who grew up in the suburbs of London, a snake might represent pure terror, poison, and hidden danger. To a biologist who spent 20 years studying reptiles in the Amazon, a snake might represent fascination, beauty, and ancient wisdom. To a child who grew up with a pet corn snake, it might represent comfort and safety. If you use a generic dictionary to interpret your dreams, you are letting a stranger live inside your head. You have to ask yourself a very specific question when looking at any dream symbol. What is my personal association with this object, this animal, or this person? If the dream featured a crumbling bridge, do not look up what bridges mean. Ask yourself what bridges mean in the architecture of your own history. Have you ever crossed a bridge during a major life transition? Did you watch a bridge burn in your past? Does the word bridge make you think of connection, or does it make you think of falling? This requires brutal honesty with yourself. Dreams do not flatter your ego. If you dream of an authority figure yelling at you, your first instinct is to blame the boss or the parent who yelled at you yesterday. But Jungian psychology suggests a much more radical approach. In the dream theater, every single character is you. The yelling boss, the terrified child hiding in the corner, the stray dog wandering through the room, the crumbling building. They are all different fragments of your own psyche acting out a drama. Think about that for a moment. That annoying coworker who showed up in your dream last night and ruined your vacation? In the language of the unconscious, that coworker is likely a symbol for a trait within yourself that you despise and refuse to acknowledge. Perhaps it is their arrogance. Perhaps it is their need for approval. Your psyche is holding up a mirror, forcing you to look at the exact quality in them that you deny exists in you. It is uncomfortable. It is humbling. It is also the only way true psychological growth actually happens. Which brings us to step 3, the integration. This is where the magic of the Jungian process turns from abstract theory into real practical transformation. A dream is not just a message to be decoded like a crossword puzzle. It is an invitation to dialogue. Jung used a technique called active imagination, which sounds mystical, but is actually a very grounded way of continuing the dream while you are wide awake. When you have completed step 1 and step 2, when you know the emotional climate and you have unpacked your personal associations with the symbols, you sit down with a notebook. You do not just close the book and walk away. You write back to the dream. You close your eyes, bring the image back into your mind, and you actually converse with the figures that appeared in the night. Imagine you had that dream about the glass cage again. You know the emotional climate was suffocation. You know your personal association with cages is about feeling trapped by your career choices. Now, in step 3, you mentally step back into that dream space while fully awake. You walk up to the glass, and instead of screaming for help, you ask the glass a question. What are you protecting me from? Or perhaps you ask the invisible crowd walking past you, why are you ignoring me? This sounds strange to the rational mind, but it taps directly into the active function of the psyche. When you converse with your dream images, you bridge the gap between the conscious ego and the unconscious depths. You stop fighting your own mind and start listening to it. Often, during this active imagination process, an answer emerges that surprises you. The glass cage was not a prison built by your boss or your partner. It was a fortress you built yourself to keep out the risk of failure. You chose the safety of the cage because you were terrified of what would happen if you actually stepped out into the open air and tried to build something of your own. That is the power of the Jungian method. It takes you from a passive victim of bizarre nocturnal movies into an active participant in your own psychological evolution. You stop asking, why did I have this weird dream? And you start asking, what part of myself am I refusing to look at? Now, before you go trying to analyze every single fragment of sleep every single night, a word of caution is necessary. Not every dream requires deep archaeological excavation. Sometimes, a dream is just mental garbage collection. If you ate a heavy meal of pizza and spicy wings before bed, your brain is dealing with physiological distress, and your dreams will reflect that chaotic physical state. Do not spend hours trying to decode a nightmare caused by indigestion. Jung himself noted that many dreams are simply the everyday debris of life, the random firing of memories and sensory impressions left over from the day. How do you tell the difference? You can feel it. Big dreams, the ones Jung called archetypal or significant dreams, carry a distinct emotional weight. They leave a residue that lingers all day. They feel luminous, urgent, and strangely coherent, even if they look absurd on the surface. Those are the ones that demand your attention. Those are the letters from the deep. As you start keeping a dream journal, do not worry if you cannot remember your dreams at first. Your unconscious is like a shy animal. If you ignore it for years, it retreats into the shadows and stops showing up. But the moment you place a notebook by your bed and make a firm commitment to write down whatever fragments you have, no matter how small or stupid they seem, the animal starts to trust you. Within a week or two, your dream recall will sharpen dramatically. You will start catching the subtle shifts in tone, the recurring symbols, the hidden messages your mind has been trying to send you for months. Remember, your psyche is not your enemy. It is not trying to trick you or haunt you with terrifying images. It is trying to make you whole. In Jungian psychology, this process of becoming your complete, undivided self is called individuation. It is the journey of bringing the unconscious contents into consciousness, so you are no longer driven by forces you do not understand. The next time you wake up from a strange, unsettling dream, do not reach for your phone to search for a generic meaning. Do not brush it off as weird brain static. Sit up, grab a pen, ask yourself how the air felt. Unpack what those symbols mean in the unique context of your own history. And most importantly, ask yourself, what part of your waking life is hiding behind that nocturnal curtain? Take a moment right now to think about a recurring dream you have had in the past. What was the dominant emotion? Whose voice was missing? What were you running from? Or what were you trying so desperately to reach? The answers are already inside you, waiting for the dark to fall, waiting for the bouncer to sleep, waiting for you to finally start listening.